I've always wondered why a house that big, in that good a neighborhood, sold for such a low price. My daughter and I are both sensitive to the supernatural, so when we're house shopping, we always go in person before signing anything. Feel the air, stand in the corners, see if the rooms are listening, except this time. We were away, on her school trip. My husband viewed it alone, texted photos, and the estate agent was eager. Offers already coming in. Won't last long. Amazing price for the area. We said yes, without the two of us ever stepping over the threshold. At the time, it just felt like we'd been lucky. After everything that happened, the price makes perfect sense. It was a Victorian detached, with a long garden that ran to a thin fringe of woods. There was a pond at the back, with a little wooden bench, the kind of bench that looks like it remembers everyone who's ever cried on it. A single car garage, opened into a narrow stairwell, leading down to a small brick cellar. Above, a loft, too low, even for a child to stand upright. And when the wind turned, the rafters complained. The place smelled of beeswax and cold stone. On the survey, it was sound, just tired. But on the first night, it felt like a room that expected an apology. We moved in on a Tuesday. By Saturday, I had started keeping score without meaning to. The first odd thing wasn't grand. It was the cellar door. You reached it from the hallway, just past the coat hooks. The door was old pine, repainted too many times. It stuck when it was warm and swung easy when it was cold. Every morning that first week, I found it open, a finger's width. I'd swear I'd closed it the night before. My husband Nick said, "It's the frame," tapped the paint with his knuckles, and smiled like I will see could fix weather. Molly, the dog, was less diplomatic. She's a black lab with a brave heart and terrible table manners. The day I first opened the cellar door to carry a box down, she stopped mid-wag, backed away and barked. Not as someone's at the door. Bark. The low warning one I've heard twice in her life. Her paws skidded on the hallway tiles as I went down. I decided it was drafts and old paint, and the way torchlight makes shadows behave like actors. That night, I woke to the subtle, awful feeling of someone standing in the doorway of our bedroom. I said, "Nick?" and felt him stir beside me. The doorway felt crowded and completely empty. At the same time, I told myself it was moving day nerves. I told myself a lot of things. My daughter passed the garage to cellar stairwell on her way out to the garden the next afternoon. She stopped and spoke, the way you speak to a cat. You don't want to startle. "Oh, hello," she said. Then, without looking at me, she added very softly, "Mum, she's here again." "Who's here?" She glanced back at the dark rectangle where the stairwell dropped away. "The lady. She's wearing a bonnet today." She wrinkled her nose. "Old clothes." I didn't tell her that. I'd also felt watched in that spot. I didn't tell her about the door or the standing in the bedroom feeling. Instead, I said, like a sensible mother, "What does she want?" "Nothing," my daughter said, as if that were the strangest part. "She just looks. She doesn't mean to be scary. She is." She went outside. I stood in the hallway and stared at the cellar door as if it might blink. I trust non-family witnesses more than anything. Family loves you enough to agree. Strangers don't. A week after we moved in, my friend Sarah dropped by with a houseplant and cake. I made tea in the kitchen while she went to wash her hands. She walked past the cellar door, stopped mid-step, and froze like a bird that's seen the glass. I heard her inhale. Then she backed away, very slowly, as if something might follow if she moved too fast. When I came round the corner, she had one hand on the wall and no colour in her face. "Is this a joke?" she said. "Are you—" Did you put someone down there for a laugh? No, I said. What did you see? A woman, she said, swallowing, standing halfway down those steps, old-fashioned dress, white bonnet. She looked straight at me, like I'd walked into her room without knocking. Sarah is a nurse. She does night shifts, and bad news, and the sort of emergencies where nothing is funny. She left the house that day, trying to be polite, but even the houseplant looked like it wanted to go with her. I closed the cellar door and pressed the bolt. It clicked, hard and honest, and meant nothing. The house, liked the hallway. That's where it showed itself the most. 2 little boys started appearing just beyond the corner of your eye, once in the hallway, by the stairs, once in the dining room doorway, and twice in the garden. In that patch, where the grass doesn't grow well because the pond steals the light. My daughter saw them first, and then, only then, did I catch them. Like a mistake, the house forgot to hide. They looked about 8. One had a fidget that never quite sat still. The other wore a shirt that seemed too big, like he'd been told, to dress smart, but couldn't keep from being a boy. They were busy, laughing, running. The kind of running that doesn't make noise. They want me to play, my daughter said, watching them from the back door. But they're not from here. From where? I asked, foolishly. She shrugged, the shrug children use when language isn't the right tool. Just not here. She didn't go. I didn't let her. The boys took no notice. They ran a game I couldn't see until they didn't. 1 second, they were there. The next, they were a pond reflection. They went back, my daughter said later that week, as if reporting the weather. Not to this house. Up. Someone came for them. I don't make rules for how the world is supposed to work. I'm busy enough with the parts I can see. I said, good, and pretended. My hands weren't shaking. 2 neighbours introduced themselves in the first month, the sort of English neighbours who bring jam and boundary questions. The second one mentioned our bench. Lovely spot, she said, pointing past me as if the house were a stage set and I'd forgotten my cue. Down by the pond, I've seen your mother sitting there some afternoons. She lives abroad, I said. The neighbour blinked. Well, she said brightly, the way people do when they don't want to be impolite to reality. Perhaps it was a friend. It wasn't my mother, she'd seen. On the days my daughter wouldn't let me hang washing at the far end of the garden, she'd say, "She's sitting on the bench again." She meant the bonnet woman. Sometimes the woman watched the water, like she was waiting for the pond to say something back. I asked my daughter what colour the bonnet was. She said, cream but grimy. I didn't need to hear the word old again to believe her. At night the loft whispered, "It's a low, mean space under the roof, good for Christmas decorations and bad for children's imaginations." The hatch was in the landing ceiling. Sometimes around 2 a.m, I'd wake because I could feel the house listening. Then the footsteps would start, soft, careful heel-toe, as if the person knew they shouldn't be there. No one can stand upright in that space. Whoever was walking had learned to be humble. Once, perhaps foolishly, I pulled the ladder down at 3 a.m. and climbed with a torch. The beam found old trunks, dusty joists, the bones of the house. The air smelled of mice and old paper. Nothing moved. The moment I climbed back down and shut the hatch, I heard on the ceiling above my head one slow, deliberate footstep. I didn't look up. I went to the kitchen and drank water, with both hands on the glass. It took a few months for the house to try words. I woke to a voice right by my ear, as if someone had leaned over the bed and put their mouth next to mine. It wasn't Nick. It wasn't my daughter. It wasn't anything I wanted. "Help me cross," it said. Not help me, not help. the full sentence with the end already in it. I shoved myself upright. The room was empty in the way. A just-vacated room is empty. Air stirred, cupboard open, curtain settling of its own accord. I slept with the hall light on after that, like a child, because being a grown-up is mostly pretending. 2 nights later, the whisper returned and woke me again. "Help me cross!" Closer this time. I answered out loud, because pretending not to hear felt rude. "I don't know how," I said. "I don't know who you are." The house made the noise. Old houses make. When they remember, they are wood and wind. My daughter hadn't seen her guardian angel, the yellow sweater man, in years. He's not a metaphor in our family. He's someone who used to stand on the far side of a busy street and lift his hand just before she decided to run. He turned up when she was very small, then vanished when she grew tall enough to look both ways. Without being asked, he came back in that house. She saw him on the landing, right where the attic hatch sticks out. "He's older," she said, which is a strange thing to say about an angel, but perhaps even guardians get tired. "Same jumper, yellow," he says. "Hello, old friend." I wanted to be relieved. I wasn't. He had only ever appeared when something might go wrong. "What does he want?" I asked. "He's looking at the hatch," she said, calm and serious. "He says, keep your feet on the stairs." We didn't pull the ladder down. At night after that. Even bravado has a bedtime. The month before we decided to leave, the house became crowded. The cellar door opened on its own, twice in one day while I was home alone. The first time it creaked, and the bolt slid back with an old metal sigh. The second time, it simply wasn't closed when I turned around. I shut it and leaned a chair against it like a joke. I didn't explain. The chair was moved when I came back, with my phone to take a photo, shifted neatly to one side, not toppled. That night, as rain tapped the pond into scales, I heard muffled laughter from behind the cellar door, children laughter, the kind that makes you smile in daylight. At midnight, it puts your heart in your throat. I heard 2 voices, then 3, then none, as if the children had remembered their manners and put their joy away for later. I stood in the hallway and listened until the house heard me listening. Footsteps crossed the loft. While we were all downstairs watching television, the volume was low. The footsteps weren't. My daughter and I looked at each other at the same time. Molly lifted her head and whined at a ceiling she didn't understand. When I woke after that, the whisper was back. Not at my ear, but at the bedroom door. "Help me cross," it said, and then, softer, "Please." It's the please that gets you. It sounds like a person who used to be alive. I bought a candle and said a clumsy prayer. I half remembered. I opened windows in rooms that felt stale and thick. I spoke out loud, something I'd once been taught to do. If you don't belong to us, and you don't belong to this house, you can go up. You don't have to stay for our sake. The house listened, like a cat watches a conversation. It gave nothing back. It was a Thursday, when I finally saw her fully. I had come in from the garden as the light gave up pretending to be day. The hallway was dark, and I didn't turn the switch, out of habit or pride. The cellar door stood slightly ajar. I put my fingertips to the edge and pushed. She was there, standing 2 steps down, looking straight up at me. Not pale, not monstrous, just present. Cream bonnet tied under her chin with a ribbon, that once had been pretty and had learned about damp, dressed to the ankles, clean but from another century, the sort of blue that bleaches itself over time. Her face was wrong, in the way old photographs are wrong. Flat somehow, like light didn't wrap around it properly. Her eyes were the right shape, but the wrong patience. We looked at each other, I felt. Very clearly the sense you get when you enter a room someone else thought was empty. It isn't hatred. It's territorial surprise. I live here, I said, because language is ridiculous under pressure. We live here. She didn't move. Her head turned a degree, as if adjusting for sound, and her gaze flicked past me, toward the back door, the long garden, the bench by the pond. For a heartbeat, she looked unbearably tired. Not cruel, not kind, just tired in a way that sleep doesn't touch. Something moved behind her. Something smaller, a weight of presence rather than a shape. And for the first time in that house, I felt unsafe, not just unnerved. I closed the door, because instinct beat curiosity, and I leaned my back against it, because fear likes props. Molly stood with me shoulder to thigh, the way dogs do, when they have decided your survival is their new hobby. Her hackles were up, but she didn't bark. Guardians don't always make noise. We tried to be sensible. We made lists. Was anyone harmed? No. Were we sleeping? Barely. Did we feel welcome? No. Did we feel tolerated? Sometimes? Was that enough? On a Saturday morning, before I could bring it up, my daughter beat me to it. "Mum," she said. "She says she's willing to share." "Who?" "The bonnet lady," she said, as if that should have been obvious. "She doesn't want to be alone. She says we can stay if we don't go into her places, the cellar, the bench, the loft. She says she won't touch our bedrooms. And if we do go into her places, she won't like it," my daughter said honestly. "She won't hurt us, but we'll know she's there." The thing about being sensitive is you hear the subtext. People don't mean to say. The thing about being a mother is you're allowed to say no to a bargain. That only works on paper. My husband was white as a sheet. "We don't have to live like this," he said, voice thin with relief. That matched my own. After a year of whispers, footsteps, and knowing we were never alone, we finally decided we couldn't stay. We put the house on the market. The estate agent did not ask why. On the day we left, I saw her again, the bonnet woman standing in the cellar doorway, watching us go. Not angry, not kind. Just making sure we knew who the house belonged to. She didn't leave. She was willing to share. We weren't.